Well, welcome to the 700 Club. President Trump is blasting a federal judge for blocking his new executive order on immigration. He called the decision, quote, unprecedented judicial overreach.
The ruling came as the president was on the road talking about the need to repeal and replace Obamacare. George Thomas has the story.
Speaking to supporters at a campaign-style rally in Nashville, President Trump said a judge's decision in Hawaii to halt his newly revised travel ban makes the country look weak and that he's working to protect Americans.
We're going to fight this terrible ruling. We're going to take our case as far as it needs to go, including all the way up to the Supreme Court. We're going to win. We're going to keep our citizens safe.
Calling it a watered-down version of his original executive order, the president says his decision to temporarily stop people from 6 Muslim-majority terror-prone nations from coming to this country is about national security, not discrimination.
The best way to keep foreign terrorists, or as some people would say in certain instances, radical Islamic terrorists, from attacking our country is to stop them from entering our country in the first place.
But the judge disagreed, saying the new ban discriminates on the basis of nationality and religion, and cited, among other examples, President Trump's January 27th interview with CBN's David Brody, in which he discussed the need to protect Christians in the Middle East.
You know, if you were a Christian in Syria, it was impossible, at least very tough to get into the United States. If you were a Muslim, you could come in. But if you were a Christian, it was almost impossible. And the reason that was so unfair is that everybody was persecuted, in all fairness, but they were chopping off the heads of everybody, but more so the Christians. And I thought it was very unfair. So we are going to help them.
The judge's ruling blocked the updated executive order just hours before it was to take effect. Meanwhile, the battle over health care continues as the president and Republican lawmakers try to convince some members of their own party and the public that their proposals are good for the country, as Trump says it's time to get rid of the failing Obamacare system.
We will end this nightmare and put in place reforms that actually improve people's lives.
The plan faces a big test today when the House Budget Committee deals with the legislation. Some Republicans have been unhappy with the new bill, calling it Obamacare Light, arguing that it doesn't go far enough to undo Obamacare. But supporters say it's only the first step on the path to first repealing, then completely replacing Obamacare. The president says he's open to debate and negotiation to make sure they get the best plan for the American people. And more negotiations are sure to come in the days ahead. George Thomas, CBN News.
Well, the judge's ruling is certainly historic, unlike the previous one where it held that there was a due process involved with anyone who had a current visa, that you couldn't take away their property rights without some sort of due process. You couldn't just suspend their visa right to travel to the United States. Now it's being extended that because there was discussion of a, quote, Muslim ban, close quote, in the presidential race, then any executive order on immigration affecting immigration of Muslims, they're literally saying you can't ever pass an executive order restricting their travel because it's an animus based on religion, which is the first time we have seen the extension of the Bill of Rights to a citizen of another country on the basis they could potentially apply for travel or residence in the United States. That's a big deal. That's an extension of judicial power that I think needs to be reviewed. And when it's reviewed, they'll certainly cite a 1952 Supreme Court ruling where the Supreme Court said the president had the power to expel from the United States any immigrant who was a communist. They didn't extend to them the right of free speech or assembly or political views. They just said the executive has this power under the Constitution. We'll see if that court case gets tested It's certainly going to go through the Ninth Circuit, which won't be the most favorable circuit to the president. And how long will it take for the Supreme Court to take this case up and issue a ruling? And in the meantime, we have ISIS out there saying, we are going to send our fighters to the United States and we're going to use your immigration rules against you. This is a very interesting case, a very interesting time for America, and a time for all of us to be praying, Lord, please protect us. Well, in other news, President Trump released his first budget blueprint today. John Jessup has that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
Thanks, Gordon. The president's budget outline promises more money for defense and cuts in other government spending, including at the State Department, the Environmental Protection Agency, and others. It would also eliminate funding for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, the National Endowment for the Arts, and more. Now, the document is only an outline, not a full budget, and we'll have a closer look at the White House budget blueprint on tomorrow's 700 Club. Well, the rise of government spending, including Obamacare, was a key factor in the rise of the Tea Party back in 2010. But where's the Tea Party today, and how much influence does it still have? David Brody has that story.
The big Tea Party rallies from years ago may be gone, but the Tea Party itself is not. Nowadays, it takes different forms.
Senator Ted Cruz.
This week on Capitol Hill, hundreds of Tea Party patriots came to Washington to partner with Tea Party lawmakers. They're not happy with Republican leaders as they push Congress to make sure the GOP's Obamacare repeal and replace plan gets done the way they think it should.
If Republicans take this opportunity and blow it, we will rightly be considered a laughingstock.
The leadership in the House is weak-kneed, and they are afraid to lead with freedom and capitalism, so they're giving you something that's half as much as Obamacare but doesn't fix the problems.
The Tea Party transition over the years has three different components. First of all, most Tea Party groups are trying to affect change at the local level. The second component is happening right here in Washington, where the Tea Party stars of 2010 are now the national political players on the scene right here in D.C. Senators like Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, Marco Rubio, and Mike Lee were all powered into office by the Tea Party movement. And Donald Trump's outsider drain the swamp image played well with Tea Partiers, too. Heritage Foundation President Jim DeMint is a card-carrying member of the original Tea Party.
The two Republicans who came closest to winning the presidency were Cruz and Trump. And those were probably the most perceived as the most outsider-type category of people who were against Washington.
DeMint sees a third and final component to the Tea Party's new appearance nowadays. They're looking a lot more like pro-Trump events.
He's my man.
Cloaked in good old-fashioned patriotism. They're now called Spirit of America rallies, and they're popping up all over America with a message. The Tea Party will not be silenced.
We are that voice. We are that silent majority, and we support Donald Trump.
The Trump voters, a lot of those were Tea Party voters, evangelicals, and they were new kind of Tea Party people coming out of blue-collar, Iron Belt America, union workers who were just tired of the baloney that Washington was giving them, and they thought maybe Trump had the power to kick down some doors and make government work for them.
The Tea Party's door-kicking days are not over at all, but the headlines today are all about those liberal protests at GOP town halls. The mainstream media wants to compare this movement to the Tea Party. DeMint says it's night and day, arguing that the Tea Party was organically motivated, unlike these current events.
But what you see with this group on the left is well organized, is well financed. We've seen all their manuals of what to do. A lot of it's George Soros funded and the Obama funded organization.
That liberal megaphone has deep pockets, and while the Tea Party's megaphone isn't rich financially, it is rich in spirit and fight, transforming right before our very eyes. David Brody, CBN News, Washington.
Thanks, David. Well, turning overseas in Israel, a leading technology company for driverless cars has reached a deal with one of the world's biggest high-tech businesses. As Chris Mitchell reports, the multi-billion-dollar deal is the largest of its kind in the history of Israel.
Mobileye maintains its technology already keeps passengers safer on the roads, reducing the risk of accidents and saving lives.
In the event of a possible collision, the system issues an alert, providing you with up to 2 seconds to brake and prevent an accident.
Intel and Mobileye say the $15 billion deal will combine the best technologies of both companies and create computerized driving solutions from the cloud to your car.
Autonomous driving is not just science fiction, it's real.
Entrepreneur John Medved is an expert on Israeli startup companies.
Mobileye, which is our hometown favorite here in Jerusalem, is supplying to somewhere between 80 and 90% of the world's auto manufacturers. They started with collision avoidance, now it's moving into, full-blown autonomous driving stuff.
That includes features like autonomous braking at red lights and for pedestrians, autonomous urban and night driving, as well as a system that senses the driving scene. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the deal proves that Israel is becoming a global technology center. That's not the only plus for Israel. Instead of moving to the U.S., Mobileye plans to keep its main operations here. And rather than being integrated into Intel, it will take charge of Intel's international activity for autonomous vehicles. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Thanks, Chris. Well, back here at home, the United Nations Ambassador Nikki Haley has blasted a report that says Israel is, quote, guilty of the crime of apartheid. The UN Secretary General has distanced himself from the United Nations report, but Haley demanded the UN do more and scrap it altogether. The report came from the UN Economic and Social Commission for Western Asia. It was co-authored by Princeton professor Richard Falk, long known for attacking both Israel and the U.S. In criticizing the report, Haley said that such anti-Israel propaganda would come from a body whose membership nearly universally does not recognize Israel is unsurprising. And Gordon Haley also pledged that the United States will continue to oppose anti-Israel actions at the UN and around the world.
And we should support that. It looks like the UN has become fixated on Israel, and the number of resolutions condemning the democratic state of Israel is absolutely incredible. It's beyond fixation. And now we've got, from our previous administration, a full resolution calling that everything in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, is a blatantly illegal occupation. You just see the sort of the lines forming on how the nations will one day gather and attack Israel. We've seen it before in my lifetime, going back to 1967, 1973. You see this continual war. We want to drive Israel into the sea. We want to wipe Israel off the map. And with that, a whole new Holocaust. They intend to kill everyone in Israel. And it's amazing to me that we haven't been standing up to it, but it's wonderful that we finally are, and finally calling it for what it is.